Ahoy there, Captain Benzie here, coming at you with another ship fitting guide for Eve Echoes, and it feels like a while since I've been doing one of these. Ultimately, there's been so much news and so much exciting new stuff coming to Eve Echoes that I haven't actually had time to really just sit down and do a ship fitting guide, which I think kind of proves the point that if anyone thinks this game is dying, well, it's really not. I think we're about to go from strength to strength, and this May update is looking absolutely fantastic. Now, today's video is going to be on the Hurricane Logistics. This is a Tech 9 battlecruiser. Of course, it's a Hurricane, which many of you should know by now is my absolute favourite hull in the entire EVE universe. So, of course, given half a chance to fly it, I'm going to do so and record it and put it onto a video. That said, though, the Hurricane Logistics has been chosen specifically for this one because there are some really interesting and unique things that we can do with it, and we're going to be talking about those throughout the video. There are actually going to be 3 different fits that I showcase in this one. Now, of course, it is filmed on the Fulmination test server, which means I have 555 in every single possible skill, and I can just magic stuff up out of creation. The downside of the test server is, of course, I cannot fly into enemy fleets, and I cannot have other players really alongside me to showcase certain things. So there are certain parts of these builds that we are just going to kind of have to take for granted, and you're just going to have to trust me that it has been tested, and it does honestly work. Anyway, so if you do enjoy this video, let me know by hitting a like on it, subscribe to the channel for all things Eve Echoes, ding the notification bell to never miss an update, and of course let me know what ships and topics you'd like to see me cover in future content. If you do want to go the extra mile to help support this channel, you can do so either by joining us over on Patreon or by checking out the Redbubble merchandise store if you've ever fancied representing this channel or the Catskull Academy, etc. on t-shirts, hoodies, laptop skins, stickers, water bottles, notebooks, all of that jazz. It's in the description down below, so do check that out, and I hope you enjoy. The Hurricane Logistics is the Minmatar Republic's Tech 9 Logistics battlecruiser. So if we head to the Minmatar Republic ship tree, across to the battlecruiser line, and climb that to Tech 9, here we find the Hurricane Logistics. And thanks to the magic of the recent update, we can now actually do a side-by-side comparison with this and the Tech 8 Hurricane. So we're going to add both of those to comparisons, then tap on the 2 here on the left side of the screen to have a look at these side-by-side. Now, it doesn't give us the full story. There are some things that are missing on this, like signature radius and scan resolution, that kind of thing, but we can have a nice little quick side-by-side here and see what the big differences are going from the Hurricane to the Hurricane Logistics, obviously the Hurricane being Tech 8 and the Logistics being Tech 9. Now, both of these battlecruisers have, of course, one drone launching tube that can launch small or medium drones for a little bit of supplemental damage. The Hurricane Logistics has 6 high slots, which is 1 fewer than the Hurricane's 7, but it does get a whopping 5 mid slots up from the Hurricane's 3. We do also lose a low slot going down to 4, whereas the original Hurricane had 5, but of course we still have 3 combat rigs and 3 engineering rigs. We'll come back to the skills in a moment, so I'm going to scroll down beyond these to the basic info of these. And you'll see that the overall defense here on the Hurricane Logistics has increased slightly. It's now at 29,392, up from 28,392, so there's an extra 1,000 EHP there, though that is compensated for by the fact that we are losing a low slot, so we're losing things like the ability to fit an additional shield booster or things like that in the low slot. Tanking modules are, we're 1 fewer tanking module possibly, but we get 1,000 EHP to kind of sort of counterbalance that. The Hurricane Logistics is going to work out slightly squishier than the original Hurricane, however. Our flight velocity has had a big increase. 203 meters per second on the Hurricane is now 227 meters per second on the Logistics, which is a really nice change there. Plus the warp speed has increased by 0.5 AU per second. We've gone from 2.7 up to 3.2. That is a fairly big change, and it does mean you're going to be able to warp around a lot quicker, and once you're on grid, you're going to be able to move a lot quicker thanks to that flight velocity increase. Our power grid output has dropped significantly, but that does kind of make sense. It's down to 594 megawatts, down from 875. Obviously, the 875 on the Hurricane is there because it needs to be able to fit the medium strike cannons, and medium strikes are, of course, the most power grid hungry of all high slots at medium size. So it makes sense that the Hurricane needs a lot more, whereas the Hurricane Logistics isn't designed to be fitting those strike cannons, so we don't have as much power grid. What we lose in power grid, however, we more than gain in capacitor. That is just terrifying. The Tech 8 Hurricane had a capacitor of 2,363 gigajoules as standard, whereas the Hurricane Logistics comes in at the start with 7,085. That is almost triple the capacitor bank of its Tech 8 brother, and just crikey, that is a huge amount of capacitance there. Now, what we're going to do here is now we're going to jump through and actually have a look at the standard full learn more. There we go. So I'm still navigating the new ship tree. So this is the Hurricane Logistics itself, and I quite like the look of this ship. That sort of slate grey black coloration to it is really quite cool. This is kind of the closest thing to a Hurricane Covert Ops I think we're ever going to get in looks. Hurricane, of course, is my favourite hull anyway in the entire of EVE. Give it that sort of black coloration, and I really, really like that. It does, of course, get the Rose Thorn skin, which you all know I've been using on my main Hurricane for a long time, though I have now changed it to the Dawn skin, because this thing is just amazing. I love the Dawn skin so much. If you hate everything else about the hunt, you do, I'm sure, at least have to concede that the skins are really, really pretty. Now, looking at the rest of the attributes and fittings here, the ones that do get missed off, you can see that we do have a scan resolution here of 252 meters and a signature radius of 192.6, so it's still a very big ship. You're not going to be speed tanking with this thing anytime soon, but we've got a pretty decent scan resolution for a battle cruiser. Now, our inertia and our mass are also pretty low, which gives us somewhat decent agility, especially for a battle cruiser. Again, you're not going to be outrunning any frigates anytime soon, but for a battle cruiser, that's surprisingly nimble and agile. Looking at the skills then here for the Hurricane Logistics, you'll see that things here are very different to the Hurricane before it. The Hurricane before it, of course, had skill bonuses to things like optimum range and accuracy fall-off of medium cannons. Here, the Hurricane Logistics gets a roll bonus of a 600% increase to remote shield booster optimal range, a 75% increase to group shield booster effective range, and a 75% increase to group capacitor transmitter effective range. This is, of course, a logistics ship. Your job here is going to be keeping everyone else alive for the most part. So you're getting a massive increase to the range of your remote shield boosters, and any group shield boosters or group capacitor transmitters, those big boof sort of shield spheres around you, are significantly larger as well. 75% increase doesn't sound, it sounds a fair amount. It's actually bigger than you'd imagine. That allows you to encompass a far greater area than you would do otherwise. That's a huge boost. We then get bonuses here from Advanced Battlecruiser Command and Advanced Remote Shield Operation. Again, of course, we're getting Advanced Remote Shield Operation. It's a logistics ship with an additional 15% remote shield booster mount per level. That's obviously there, a 75% at full training. That's a really nice amount there. On top of the additional range that the shield boosters have, you're getting that additional shield booster amount. That means that this is very, very effective at healing up the fleet. It then also has a reduction of 7.5%, so 37.5% of full training, to the amount of capacitor that those require, which, in fairness, considering that the Hurricane Logistics has that massive capacitor bank and recharge mode, which we'll talk about in a moment, it really isn't worrying too much about its capacitor. Finally then, Advanced Battlecruiser Command gives us an additional 150% to remote capacitor transmitter optimal range, and a 15% increase to remote capacitor transmitter transmission effect. Now the interesting point there is that remote capacitor transmitter optimal range, that's 150% per level, so that's 750% if you have Advanced Battlecruiser Command at level 5. Obviously, again, 75% increase to the transmission effect, so you're transmitting 75% more capacitor. Remember, remote capacitor transmitters are basically reverse energy Nosferatus. They take a capacitor out of your ship and put it into the targets instead. Whereas things like the group shield booster and the group capacitor transmitter, they boost everyone around you, they consume fuel, but they do also boost yourself. But again, I mentioned that this ship has a recharge mode. So what does recharge mode do? Well, in short, it increases the signature radius of your ship massively, and it slows your ship down to an absolute crawl, but increases your capacitor recharge rate by 50%. Now we can already see that the maximum capacitor recharge rate here is 31.74, which is pretty large. Capacitor recharge time of 558 seconds is pretty good for a capacitor of this size. Then we're going to add an additional 50% on top of that by going into recharge mode, and that makes this ship absolutely devastating. As this is a logistics ship, I think of course we should first of all start by actually looking at a logistics fit. So if you're wanting to use the Hurricane Logistics as a ship for remote shield boosting, capacitor transference, etc., basically as a support character for your fleet, then this is the fit that I would recommend, and it is astonishingly cheap. The hull itself is fairly expensive. I think it's about 400 million to buy a Hurricane Logistics, but the actual fittings themselves tend to be very cheap on the market because there aren't many logistics pilots out there, which is a crying shame, because if you're a logistics pilot, every fleet ever wants you. You get to come along to ratting fleets almost all the time. You can actually, you're wanted in every single PvP fleet. Everything you do, people are going to want to bring you along as a logistics pilot. Anyway, so looking at the high slots first of all, I've gone here for 5 Gisty C-type large remote shield boosters. Now these boost 800 shields every 8 seconds at a cost of 264 gigajoules capacitor, with an incredible optimal range here of 70.35 kilometers and an accuracy fall-off of 70 kilometers. That means you are able to repair 50% of that 400 shield boost at a distance of 140 kilometers, and you can go all the way out to theoretically 210 kilometers, but obviously you're not going to be doing much at that kind of range. Now, yes, you did hear me right. I said 5 GIST C-type large remote shield boosters. You'll see that the 6th one here is a medium remote shield booster. This is just in case you need to have something that's a little bit closer. You can go for a full pack of 6 of the large here. I prefer to have one that is on medium because I can put that on my main healing target and I can just leave that one running and it will top up every 6 seconds. It's a nice amount every 6 seconds, and it's going to something I can keep running constantly. Then I can add the other large ones individually, one at a time, onto different targets as they need healing, with this one going in the background. If you've played other MMOs, the basic concept I'm going for here is essentially like... it's like putting a heal over time effect on someone. You cast that regenerate spell or whatever and it starts healing them, and it will keep healing them like indefinitely for a small amount, and you can top up everyone else in the party, or indeed the tank, etc., with that large one as needs require. It's just a way to have something that is always operational. Now in our mid slots I've gone for 2 large group shield boosters, Mark 9s here again. It's a Tech 9 ship, there's no reason to go for Mark 7s as far as I'm concerned. These do use quite a lot of fuel, 800 gigajoules of fuel per activation every 20 seconds, but they add an additional 482 shield boost to everyone within that radius, and the radius of this thing is even larger, 42 kilometer radius. That is absolutely massive. You're going to be boosting every friendly ship, including yourself, for 482 shield every 20 seconds within 42 kilometers, and there are 2 of those that you can have syncopated, so you activate one, you put the second one on at 50% activation, so that they're constantly giving you that big push over time. Same kind of effect here with large group capacitor transmitters. Now the idea here again is that we're converting fuel, 1800 gigajoules every 30 seconds, into 275 gigajoules of capacitance, which is going to myself and to every friendly ship nearby within that 10.5 kilometer optimal range. The optimal range of these, as you can see, is very short, but we do have 3 of these running, so any ship nearby, again, try and put these into a syncopation. You have one that you activate immediately, 10 seconds later activate the second one, 20 seconds after the first one, 10 seconds after the second one, activate that third one, so you've got one of these going off every 10 seconds in a beautiful little cycle of capacitance. It'll really help out your fleet and helps keep everyone topped up on their capacitor quite nicely. Of course, there is a drone here, a Mark 9 Valkyrie, but in fairness, if you even left this empty, I don't think anyone would care. It's a tiny amount of extra damage, 38.44 DPS, if the enemy ships are in range. Quite frankly, you're not intending to do damage as a logistics in a fleet. It's just a nice little supplemental if anything does get close, enough for you to actually apply that to your target. Now for the low slots, I've gone first of all for a Scout medium micro warp drive. This allows you to relocate from A to B nice and quickly. Of course, if you are trying to relocate, you are going to need to turn off your recharge mode. It has an 8-second cooldown before you can switch it back on again, but 100%, if you try to use a medium micro warp drive whilst you've had your ship's movement speed reduced by 80%, I'm sorry to say that you are an absolute idiot. You need to take that off first, then activate your micro warp drive and boost to wherever it is that you're trying to get to. Once you're there, you reactivate recharge mode and you continue to heal your fleet. We then have 2 Enterprise Adaptive Invulnerability fields that are just going to keep running nicely and give us some very high invulnerability across the board, which you'll see with the rigs, gives us some very high factors, and a Demolish Medium Capacitor Battery, just in case things start to get a little bit hairy and I need to come out of recharge mode to relocate and I'm losing a lot of capacitor. I can dump in a capacitor batteries amount here, and that will help me keep going until recharge mode can kick back in. Now for the rigs, for the combat rigs, I've gone for a suite here of anti-EM screen reinforcer, anti-thermal screen reinforcer, and anti-kinetic screen reinforcer. These of course just boost up their individual stats by 40%. We've already got pretty good explosive resistance on our shields, so it's nice to just boost up the others here with those screen reinforcers there. And when we're undocked, I'll show you in just a moment what that looks like with everything running. Finally then, for the engineering rigs, I've gone for 2 capacitor control circuits, just the level 1 versions, and a targeting system subcontroller. This of course means I can lock on a little bit faster, and those other ones just mean that the capacitor ones mean that my capacitor's recharging that little bit faster and giving me the capability there to actually, you know, just keep my capacitor going for as long as possible. The aim is to keep everyone else alive, and I can't do that if I run out of capacitor myself, which is why this works really nicely in a fleet, because their group capacitor transmitters are going to be hitting yours as well. So here we are now in space, and you can see, unfortunately, you can't stack the large shield boosters, etc. So you do have to learn to be able to flip between your different points there. I've put all the main healing stuff on the first one, and I can tap through to the micro warp drive, the battery, the drones, and that here. But if I activate the 2 the adaptive invulnerability fields here, what I would normally do again, I don't know why I do this, I just do it with all modules. There's no real reason to do it with adaptive invulnerability fields. I syncopate them like that. There we go. Now if I go back into the fitting menu and have a look at our defences, those are our raw defences with that all operational. 83,221, with electromagnetic resistance 75, thermal 78, kinetic 84, and explosive 77. Those are nice high resistances and they're going to keep you going for a while. And then if I activate there the recharge mode, you can see the capacitor recharge time is reduced by 50%. We're getting a bigger ship speed and a slower speed, ship size and slower speed, but you should see now our capacitor is a lot more comfortable here. There we are, sitting there at 1 minute 04 because we've got things activated and it hasn't shown through properly, but you do get a nice stable, like semi-stable capacitor there. But when you have all of these running as well, which we'll do now, you'll see that we start to really boost up our capacitor, and I'll show you that syncopation that I meant. So we put the first one on there, and there it goes. And when that hits sort of the 10-second, about a third of the way around, so about 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock on the clock, there we are, we activate the second one. Keep an eye on that first one. When the first one reaches about 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, there we go, we activate the third one. We've now got maximum capacitance going on there. You'll see I've got a cargo hold full of plasmoids to fuel this thing, because my goodness, this will just chew through. But ultimately, you should find that you're not actually ever really needing to use all of this in one go, and you do actually end up doing a nice little pretty fireworks display fairly constantly around you as well, if we add the shield boosters in there just for an extra effect as well. If you're a logistics pilot, everyone notices where you are in the fleet. You can't really hide because you just boost out this big bubble constantly. And there it is. So that is what I would recommend for a logistics fit. You can go out in a fleet, keep them all alive, keep them all topped up quite nicely. As I said, obviously if you do want to actually move to somewhere, like if I go to approach here, I need to make sure I've set that as a 0 approach. There we are, I'm really not moving there. So with the micro warp drive activated, my top speed is currently 345 meters per second. That's because I'm in recharge mode. If I take recharge mode off and go back to normal mode, you see my top speed suddenly reverts back to 1,727 meters per second with that on. Anyway, so let's dock up and we're going to talk about the second fit. Now, this particular fit was suggested to me by Cracked Potato, one of the guys here in Void. I think actually he's in Nilf, and they are pretty good PvPers, and it was a really interesting idea, so I thought I'd talk about it in this video. Now, no, your eyes do not deceive you. Those are indeed rapid missile launchers on the Hurricane Logistics, and I'm colloquially referring to this either as the Hurricane, because obviously there are Hurricane rapid missile launchers, or indeed as the poor man's Ashimmu, because that is essentially what this ship is. Now this is designed for a combat roam. You basically pretend to be a vulnerable ship and you hope that someone jumps you and tries to sort of deal with you. This is excellent for dealing with enemy frigates, destroyers and small ships that otherwise you may struggle with. So for the high slots here, I've gone for Pitham C-type medium rapid missile launchers, although as I said, you can go for the Hurricane medium rapid missile launchers just for the namesake, because lol. And I've gone for a full brace of 6 of these. That gives us a nice hefty DPS here of 561.74. Now I do say hefty DPS, obviously I know you can get a lot higher with other battle cruisers out there, but everyone knows what a Drake can do, or a standard Hurricane can do, so people don't tend to engage those randomly. They don't tend to run off scared when they see one. When they see a Hurricane Logistics, on the other hand, people look at that and go, easy prey. And they'll jump you, and hopefully you can then open fire, lock them down here with the Republic Fleet Warp Scrambler, and then you neutralise them with a large energy neutraliser and 2 medium energy neutralisers. Now, I'm going to actually try and pull up my, where is it? There we are, my calculator. 1,580 gigajoules worth of neutralisation every 24 seconds. That is a humongous amount of capacitor flattening, and that's just one ship. The idea is that theoretically you could put 2 or 3 of these ships together into a Rome with similarly fit sides. People will look at them and think, oh, it's the logistics fleet moving into position, and then you open fire. You lock them down and you open fire. You neutralise the ever-living daylights out of them and turn them into a floating brick, and then you rip them apart with your rapids. Of course, we do have a Mark 9 large group shield booster here as well. These are, of course, exponentially effective. If there's one ship using these, well, it's 482 shield boost every 20 seconds for all ships in the fleet. If there are 3 of you all running these, well, that's triple that. And that's a lot of healing coming off this particular ship. And of course, we're getting the bonuses to that and its optimal range as well, thanks to this being equipped to the Hurricane Logistics. A drone again, Mark 9 Valkyrie drone just for some supplemental damage. We have a micro warp drive for quick repositioning. I've got 2 Enterprise adaptive invulnerability fields to help keep the resistances up. And the idea here of having an all-round damage control, yes, okay, it only lasts for 13 seconds, but if myself and my friends are in one of these things and we hit an enemy ship, we should be able to kill it within those 13 seconds, because we're going to flatten its capacitor pretty quickly and then just rip it apart with those medium rapid launchers, at which point, with multiple of us, that's an absolutely incredible amount of damage that this thing can kick out. Beyond that, even if this is just one in a fleet on its own, you can still, ultimately, with that running, you can do a good amount of, like, dropping their capacitor, with the all-round damage control active for 13 seconds, and then the adaptive invulnerability fields running even beyond that, you should find that you have a lot of EHP that your opponent still needs to crack through before they actually start doing any real damage. You are incredibly tanky, you kick out a lot of power, and you flatten their capacitor. Obviously, this does work better against ships that are using railguns, lasers, that kind of thing, rather than perhaps cannons, because cannons obviously don't require capacitor. If you shut down an enemy ship that, you know, is relying on its capacitor, it's a floating brick and you can just rip it apart. Now, the rigs have, of course, changed here. I've gone for 2 bay loading accelerators and a warhead calefaction catalyst. Now, I have to laugh. Yes, I am notorious for forgetting that it's a bay loading accelerator and calling it something like, you know, a missile burst aerator, or the warhead calefaction catalyst, calling it a missile collision accelerator. I get why the names are different. It's that little bit extra immersion, but you know what? Someone put a meme of this on Reddit and I just had to laugh my head off. This was one of the best little memes I've ever seen. I actually want to get that printed out and put in a little frame and hang it up nearby. It's so much fun for me. Anyway, on the other side then, I've gone for 3 targeting system subcontrollers. This gives me a fantastic targeting here of 720mm scan resolution. That locks on very quickly. It means an interceptor who sort of comes in and spots that you're a Hurricane Logistics, they have a moment's hesitation where they're like, should I engage? Should I try? That moment's hesitation is all you're going to need to lock them down and then rip them apart, which I find personally quite hilarious. The basic concept of this, as I said, is that you play it like an Ashimmu. This is a poor man's Ashimmu. It's not a cheap ship, you know, you're still looking at a good, maybe, like, a good solid billion. But a fully fitted and equipped Ashimmu is going to set you back 2 billion, so it's about half the price, but still very, very effective and works nicely in a Rome. And if you wanted to, theoretically you could change those engineering rigs, if you're going around with other people, change those to what we had before on our logistics fit earlier, and then you just change out the fittings when you want to go as a logistics, and you come back to this when you want it to be your little PvP roamer. Now, I've seen This to me is a really cool little build, and I can't wait to properly get this into action on the live server. I am currently building into one of these, and I've kind of given the game away now, really, haven't I? If you see Captain Benzie in local and he's flying a Hurricane Logistics, everyone's going to run. But hey, there we go. For those people who haven't seen the video, hopefully I'll get some footage of this thing in action fairly soon. I just wanted to talk about it in this video because it's just an evil little ship design. Anyway, I think that about covers everything I wanted to say today about the Hurricane Logistics. I really like this ship. Of course I do. It's a Hurricane, and I am absolutely mad about Hurricanes. If you want to, you know, draw me some fan art or make a 3D print and send it out to Zimbabwe, then 100% it would be the Hurricane. I love this ship to pieces. I know I'm best known for my Thrashers, and as a frigate pilot, I am mainly a frigate main, but I have to have a second character who is fully trained in everything to do with Hurricanes, and yeah, that's exactly what we're doing here with the Hurricane Logistics and eventually the Hurricane E-War. And if you do want to check that one out, I've done a video on the Battlecruiser E-Wars. I can't wait for those to be added. The Hurricane E-War looks absolutely amazing, and will actually beat out this one, I think, is probably my favourite Hurricane in the entire game. But anyway, let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. What do you think about this fit? Is it going to work nicely in PvP? Have you been running something similar? I did genuinely consider trying this out as a Harbinger, but I found that I couldn't get the Harbinger nearly capacitor stable enough. One thing I haven't mentioned about this fit is that if you actually go out into space, which I'll do very quickly now before we end this video, if I go out into space and I activate recharge mode, you'll see that even with a large energy neutralizer and 2 medium energy neutralizers active, this ship is then capacitor stable. Forgive the fact that the fittings are all over the place here and that I don't have any fuel in the tank. We're just going to go out here to put recharge mode on, and then if I jump back into the fitting, you'll see that becomes capacitor stable. All of that neutralization going on and you're cap stable. Yes, okay, you sacrifice all of your mobility for that, but who cares? The idea is that you just sit there in a fight and utterly obliterate anything that gets close to you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. Otherwise, folks, thank you for watching right the way to the end. Happy sailing, and see you in New Eden!